economic aspects of web accessibility. And I will show you that there are different things to consider when you're making web pages for the public sector. For example, format was very important for people in Germany, but we have now people, especially from France, I heard from Leah, and from other countries. And as long as you're in the European Union, I think most of the things are completely the same for you because of the European, I always forget the name of the law, but I've written it down. We will see it later. So you will see that these things are important for you too. And of course, if you're not only working in Germany, in the EU, but also in America, there are also similar laws like this. And of course, there are more benefits for you that I will talk about. Yeah, that's me. With a little bit more than today. And the first thing before I'm talking about the contents is ask you why accessibility. And I want to answer with a citation with a quote from James Edwards, because it's our job. In my opinion, every website anyway should be accessible, no matter if we have benefits from it or not, because yeah, we are one people. We have a lot of different kind of people living in Germany, in the European Union, in France, and we are all different, but I think everybody should be able to use websites, should be able to use web apps and get the benefits from it. Especially people with accessibility issues have more problems to reach things in the real world, and it's much easier to get things done online for them than for anybody else. So they have especially the need for accessibility for using just web pages. And this is why this is our job. Web pages which are not accessible, in my opinion, are just broken. But that's just the first thing. Now we are getting in details and we are getting to the topic of this talk. Yeah, we have 10 different points, or I have prepared 10 different points I'm talking about. And this is a little overview. Some of them have a few slides, some a lot, some not a lot. We will see. They are not all equal. So first things, law and order. This is something we cannot really discuss of. This is just given, and we'll have a look at it. I'm starting with Germany because I have switched off everything except the phone. And I'm very sorry. This is, I was not switching it off because it's ringing not very often here. So I forgot it. I hope this was the last thing. In Germany, we have a law which is called Behindertengleichstellungsgesetz. I don't think it's important for all of you to translate it. These listeners who are from Germany anyway will understand what it means, that people with accessibility issues, with handicaps, they also should be treated equally. This is, of course, in the Constitution written like this, but there is a special law for this to making it sure. And this is a general law. This is not only about the web and online services, but it also says that there must be wheelchair accessibility to subways and things like this, to public buildings from the town and things like this. But the BITV, this is something which is especially for the online sector, and this is about how to make websites accessible and which success criteria must be fulfilled to get this, no, let's say, quality sign, or yeah, an official report you can get for this, let's say like this. And yeah, the rest, I think it's a little bit too detailed for this talk today. This is just the basis of the laws. And in European, we have the European 2020 strategy. And what's interesting in this is that the reason for making things accessible is not so much like I was saying in the first beginning of this talk, when I said it's just the right thing to do, but the European Union is not so kind, or whatever you want to say it. The European has really some strategic interests, and this is we are all lacking well-educated people, and they are thinking that people which have disabilities are not stupid and have, of course, the possibility from mind and other things to work, and they should work. So this is not a gift or a nice treatment for them. They want people with disabilities to work. And yeah, what's behind this is they want people with disabilities to get education, to get jobs, and lead even their own companies. And therefore, they want everything to be accessible. Not only web services and online things, but of course also these. So this is something which is important, and every country in the European Union has to make its own laws. From Germany, I told you, which it is, in France and Austria and so on, you should have this also. That makes sure that people with disabilities have equal access to at least public sector. This means that if you're working or want to work for a government, then you have to deliver accessible products. In Germany, this got quite really strict now, and it's for hardware, for software, for web apps, for online apps, but also for offline software, and it's for everything. It's does not matter any longer like it was before if it is public and can be used from everybody, but it's also for internal services. This is clear, of course, if you remember why this is done, because they want that people with disabilities will be able to work. So even the working place for people with disabilities must be accessible. They must be able to use the intranet, not only the internet, and all the tools for logging the time when they are working, and all the things which are necessary for organization inside of a country or federal office or whatever, wherever they're working. So this is the European frame around all of this, and all the countries have their own laws about it. For example, Austria quite strict also. They even said, I will go back once again. In Austria, for example, every contract which is made in the business to business area, so that a professional agency is delivering a website for a professional company who wants to sell things, they have to make it accessible. And this is not only because of the European Union. This is not demanded by the European Union. This is what Austria made itself. So some countries, also Germany, has made some of these rules even stricter than the European Union demands. Yes, and in the US, we have this situation already for some time. I'm not really sure for how long, but it's much longer than in the European Union. I make this short because I think most of the people from you are working in the European Union. But just to let you know, there are these things also, and for quite some time. And maybe this is one of the reasons why the international guidelines, the web content accessibility guidelines, are from America coming. And actually, we had our own guidelines in Germany, but they completely deleted it. And also in Germany now we are all have to be conformed to the web content accessibility guidelines. WCAG, it's normally the abbreviation is pronounced normally WCAG. And this is then we have some special laws which are not international laws, but from different countries like Australia, Ireland, South Africa, Malta. I was writing down, they have their own things which are maybe not compatible, but last but not least, if people with handicaps can use the pages, they will have good chances to work there also. And last but not least, over everything, there are the United Nations Convention of Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which are belonging to the general human rights, and they are signed or ratified by about 30 nations. So this is the things which are given us, which are explicitly demand that we have to work accessible if we want to work for some countries, for official government institutions. Yeah, here in education is important for these countries who make these laws, employment and human resource development. So law and order, when you consider offering work, services or products in an international context anyway, and also in the European Union, you should be aware of accessibility. Your competitor probably is. About this we are also talking later, because there are already companies who have this in mind and deliver accessible tools. So yeah, if you don't, you are less good than them, and it will be more difficult to sell you things. The next thing, if you don't care so much about the laws, the next benefit you're yourself getting is reputation. And everybody who is working for some company who has to sell things, no matter services or physical products or web apps or whatever, apps for the App Store from Google or Apple, of course you want to sell things, and it always helps if you can say we are the good guys. Being or delivering accessible software is showing that you have social commitment and that you care about everybody, and that you are accepting that you're responsible for how you build things. And for me, once again, if something is not accessible, it's just broken. And by the way, of course, you can make, you can really offensive talk about it. You can write it onto your web page that you're accessible and so on. So you know that a lot of big companies are making good things like saving the rainforest and other things, and then later on using it in the advertisements. And if you have accessible things to offer, then of course this is a possibility to talk about it in your advertisements. Employment. Yeah, let's get a little bit deeper into this. I was writing down some kind of handicaps people can have, and yeah, maybe I will just wait for a few seconds and you read it by yourself, and you think about if you would like to have somebody like this working in your company. And then I will show you maybe one or two already thought of people like this. And I think if you see the names I'm writing here, you will agree with me that these people can be good musicians, that completely paralyzed people can be a big benefit for your own company. Amputation of one leg, if you want to Google it, Sudha Chandran is an Indian dancer, and it's really impressive to watch. Yeah, just Google it, you find YouTube videos and so on. And learning disabilities, which means that you have, for example, poor grammar skills. It does not mean that you cannot become president of the United States of America even. So we all know this, that all these things are making your life more difficult, but they don't mean that you cannot deliver results for your company, especially if you have the right tools. Selling things. Any questions so far? We are already going to the fourth chapter.
So far, it looks good. I have an eye on the chat, so please feel free to ask questions and write comments in the chat.
All right, selling things. Everybody can buy stuff. This is also clear. And this is a really important thing. Now, it's a little bit, it sounds to me sometimes like it's so completely obvious that it's necessary to buy things online because of coronavirus. Now everybody feels that, yeah, it's much easier for you, I guess, to imagine what it means for people that cannot go outside or have difficulties using public transportation, going on public streets, because they're completely blind and they don't see cars coming and so on, and other people staying around, and every obstacle which might be in the way could be harmful. For example, there is a city in Germany where a lot of blind people are studying with a famous university. It's called Marburg. And especially in this town, of course, this has changed now. I don't know what they thought when they did it. I think they wanted to do everything right, but they were putting on the bus stops signs, and they need now I need your help, Lea. What are
What do you
you,
want to say?
wie nennt man diese Pfosten, an denen das die Schilder festgemacht sind auf Englisch, weißt du?
Well, they made that's a difficult one. Where at the bus stops they made signs. Well, you can say signs.
Yes. And normally they are standing on one, let's say feet, or like everybody understands what I mean, yeah? Normally they're standing on one leg and the sign is on top of it, but they made it on two legs for making it more stable, or I don't know why, but as a result, the blind people are coming with their sticks and they're feeling, aha, there's one of these legs, and they want to go to the other side, and then with their head, they are going into the sign directly. And they changed it because this is really ridiculous of you putting things like this in a town, which is especially where it's really a lot of blind people are living, and so they changed it. But these are the things I like to put stress on, because this is things people were doing with something good in mind, but you have to test it. And all these things which are we cannot imagine very often, which are making life difficult for people with disabilities, are standing in their way in the real world. So they much more than even now in this difficult time need accessible things. And these are about 10 million Germans with severe disabilities, about 80 million citizens of the EU, This is the same like inhabitants in whole Germany, and nearly 1 billion worldwide. Of course, not everybody of them blind, but in a wheelchair, without the ability to listen or whatever. Yeah, just to see this big number. And of course, who does not want to sell things to so many people? And people with disabilities are active users because of the things I told just now, because real life can be difficult and dangerous for them. The average person uses the internet 5.1 days per week. People with disabilities 6.5 days per week. This is more than 20% more often. Here's the link to the study where you can read about it if you're interested in. And visitors are more willingly to subscribe for a newsletter when they understand what you are talking about. Why I was writing this here? Of course, this is true. Maybe this becomes clear when I'm going on. So, selling to people studying in libraries with sound turned off. This is another aspect about accessibility. We are coming to this also. In this part of the talk, I want to make to give you examples how we all have to deal with disabilities in some situations, because we can maybe sit in the library and find something interesting and say, oh, I want to buy this, but we cannot because we don't understand something what is explained by a speaker, and there are no subtitles. So we don't understand what it is about, and we cannot buy it because we don't know what it does without sound. You can sell things to digital nomads working at the beach on a sunny day, which does not work if your website has poor accessibility, because you're making it very subtle with nice colors, which are working very well if you have a home with a 50-inch TV and the windows closed and everything. But when you're sitting on a sunny day and have a laptop, which is not the most expensive one, you just don't see anything at all. So use, in this example, use high contrasts. You can sell to commuters sitting in a shaky bus, moving through sunlight and shadow, reading on a small glaring display. Once again, just imagine this situation, an everyday situation. We all know this. We are sitting in the bus, having our small device, and everything is moving, and we have to touch the buy button and just try to find it. When the contrast is poor, you can have difficulties to find it at all. And if the button is very small, you have to try it not only once to hit it finally. And these things are annoying, and people tend to give up if something is too difficult to use. So yeah, take away from this selling chapter, there's no such thing like an average user. And yeah, whenever there are many, we're talking about 1 billion people, then there is a market, of course. There are people you can sell to, and it's really important to make yourself clear. There are communities all over the world now, Facebook groups and things like this, also for people with handicaps. And they are talking about the websites they are using, and they are saying which work good and which doesn't. And if somebody is not able to buy shoes on Zalando, and next one is saying Amazon is better, maybe not perfect, but better, then all the people in the group will, no, most of them at least, will go to this page where they can buy the shoes, of course. Don't even try something else. Here are some success stories. This is not completely new numbers, but nevertheless still impressive. And they are making still sense. I tell you later why. Because a study of the Royal National Institute of the Blind shows that a supermarket chain that invested £35,000 in an accessible website increased their income by £30 million per year. So this is really impressive return of investment. German is the champion of the world when it comes to traveling. Yeah, that's true. The travel industry could increase their sales by 610 to 1 billion euros if people with disabilities could travel without barriers. This is a study, this is not proven, but this is the potential which is seen in here. And these numbers are really impressive. And because not a lot of things changed since then, I think these are still valid examples, and everybody should think about it. Because I thought now one more number is coming, but if not, I'm telling you that about 95–98% of the web is not accessible. And the 2, maybe 5% of web pages which are, I guess, are normally government pages or sites. So if you're starting now, there's a very good chance that in your kind of business, you're one of the first. And like I said before, there are communities, and people with handicaps also talk with each other. And when if you're one of the first and people are coming to you, I think they don't leave your shop just because another accessible shop will open with the same articles later or products later. It's they are your customers, and they will stay there if everything is okay. So it's a good time, yeah, to be the first. Still, most pages and sites are not accessible. Yeah. In Germany, there's a saying, ohne Fleiß kein Preis. If you're not giving some effort first, you won't get anything back. Something like this it means. Of course, we have to talk about the costs, and especially for people who never have done anything like this before, this is like a mountain they are standing in front of, and they have to climb it. And yeah, this is something which is intimidating, abschreckend. Yeah, okay. So how much is it? Actually, it's that little. The additional costs are between 0 and 10% of the project budget. What does it mean? This means that if you're doing things right from the very first moment, it is not a lot of additional work. Normally, it's just about doing things different. Not doing it the way you may be used to, but make it like so that it is accessible. For example, this signs on 2 legs, you're just building like everywhere else, signs with 1 leg, and this is maybe even cheaper. So you can easily do it, and you're even saving money, and it's better for people which are blind. But there is something which I have to add for this, about 10% more work in some places. If you're a trained expert, if you know what you're doing. So you have to learn it, because if you don't know the problems, if you don't know what are the things people which are blind or not hearing or whatever cannot handle, then you will build it into your web page. You have to know what makes things inaccessible. By the way, were you born knowing search engine optimization? Everybody is doing this, but this is nothing you can do without learning it. And actually, this is a lot to learn, I think, much more than learning how to make things accessible. And your generated income should be higher than your costs. We were talking about this before. You need some effort, you must put some work in it, but it's less than you maybe expected. I think most of you thought it's much more difficult, but actually it's not. And I'm giving you one example, which is really additional work. You should describe with text every non-textual content. Non-textual contents are videos or pictures or things like this, because if you have a picture of a person and there is no description for that from it, of course, blind people are not able to know what is on the picture. And even if this is not important, they are always feeling left out. Just go on a web page and disable all images and try to understand it. And you see all the places where images should be. And if there is no alternative, no textual alternative for it, you will think all the time you are missing something, even if they are just decoration and there's nothing important on it. So things you should do here is, if this picture is important, then describe it. And if it's not, then hide it from people which cannot see, so they don't think that there is something missing. And of course, describing the pictures is some work. But the first thing you're getting back from this immediately is a better result, a better ranking in search engines, because you all know the sentence, I guess, content is king. And if you have pictures and you describe them, it's more content. There can be keywords stuffed into it, and you can use this for even improving your page ranking in Google, Bing, and all the others. So this is quite direct benefit you're getting from making things accessible for everything. Your webpage will be found a little bit better. Yo, I'm quite fast, I think, today, because of no questions. I thought, no, maybe in the end I need some time. So I've already, still quite fast, no problem. So I was talking about dancing with one leg here, people dancing that are not using legs at all. And I think this is really beautiful pictures from Wikimedia Commons. Of course, this is free, can stay in the YouTube video. Everything's okay with the rights here. If you're looking at these pictures, I want to, with showing these pictures, I want to make clear for you, we are making assumptions very often about what people with handicaps can do and cannot do. And this is, of course, why I was using Ludwig van Beethoven when I was saying, would you take some person like this for a musician? Of course you can. People which are having disabilities very often can do much more than we can imagine. There are blind people who love to go to the movies. There are, I think this is enough for examples. I just want to show you in this moment, we don't have to, and we should not make the decisions for other people. They can make it their own. And of course, a lot of blind people don't like movies because a lot of things they don't understand. But there are still people who like this, and we are not the people to say, okay, I build my cinema in a way that blind people cannot access it, because blind people anyway cannot see movies. You never should think like this, because maybe they can and they want. Yeah, so how to make things accessible? I'm not diving into the how to make it technically in this talk. We have 2 more talks, one about CSS and HTML. In the next week, we are talking about the basics of HTML and CSS, but the results, of course, will be all accessible. And we will see that as long as we are not putting obstacles into our code, they will be completely accessible, and this will be very short talks, only 45 minutes for HTML and 45 minutes about CSS. And you can see that in this case, the additional effort for making things accessible will be 0%, like I told you before, and you can see it. But here we are not going into the technical things. I just wanted to show you some things from Germany. Of course, most of these, can you see this? Yeah, these are web pages from the German government, and of course they have to be accessible, and they're looking like any other web page, and you cannot tell from anything that they're more ugly or whatever, that these things are accessible. Just a few examples. A ministry here, of course, all cookies we have to accept here. I don't think that, yeah, German design is gray. I heard not long ago, it seems to be right. ZDF, which is the television broadcast. Yeah, and they are offering a lot of films. Here are news and things like this. And you can start them, you can watch them. And I hope, especially in the news, we can maybe even see. I hope this is working without sound. That actually they are doing a lot of effort here, that you can understand things even without listening. It's not working here, but there are different formats. You have to look for it on the web page, and you can switch off the, here it is. Poor example. I'm sorry for this bad example. I wanted to show you just the pages, and I thought now we have a little bit time and we can look into one video. And especially if you want to show something, this is not working. But I know that there are, especially in the news, videos with subtitles, with a small person on the side making these strange movements for people which are deaf, which are translating into the sign language and things like this. And there are examples of this. I hoped I can just click one and it will be, but it's not. But I think you saw these things and you know it. How it's working. Also here, a beautiful, colorful web page, accept all cookies, and not everything gray here. And last example, the town of Eppingen, small town in Germany. So I think also this town is not the richest in Germany. It's a small one, but also for them it's possible to make things accessible. It's not necessary that everything is black and white. If the contrast is high enough, in this case, it's a dark purple and white, and I think they're using a color contrast analyzer to make it sure. You can see it can be colorful, it can be creative. I don't remember when I saw such a picture in the background of a web page. In one word, websites that are accessible don't have to be boring. All right, I want this, but how can I get an exclusively designed website? Well, that's the bad news. You have to kiss. Of course, not me. And this is an abbreviation for keep it simple and smart. Like always in software development, don't make it too complex. Keep things simple and smart. I cannot say a lot about more of this, but I was putting a link into it, The Cult of Complex, where on a list apart, a very famous resource on the web about web development, and there you can read a lot about problems we are making ourselves by trying to make everything easier. or let's say faster. We are using stacks of software for, very often for getting things done quick. And very often we don't understand all of them into the last piece of it. And the essence of this article is, after some time, yeah, let's say 1 year, then if you making a website and not working it for 1 year and you have to change some things, you're getting normally really into trouble, because the things you were using there, a real stack of many different software, which you were putting on this day and work together on this day, have updates until today. And maybe for the new feature you want to implement, you need to update one component of your whole construct. And this is not working together with another component which you may or may not update. And here things are becoming tricky and difficult. And after building something quick and easy, maybe the maintaining must be continuous and expensive, or is not possible after some time because things are not working together anymore if you have to update parts of it. So if you're putting something more on everything, like being accessible and using more tools for this, you're making things even more complex. And I think this should not be the approach. Try, whenever you're doing things, to keep them simple, smart, understandable, and maintainable for a long time, or make it work for once and live with it and know that you cannot update it. And if you want to change something major, you have to start from the very beginning. Also, read the specs. Before I'm going into the specs a little bit, maybe write into the chat if there is somebody interested in technical backgrounds here at all. Because if you're talking about the economic aspects, maybe, is there anybody saying, I want to hear about the official specs?
Yes, there is a,
Okay.
Lina says yes.
Okay, then
Thank you,
I will
Lina.
do it. So, we have official specifications about HTML, CSS, and especially for the accessibility, which is called the Web Content Accessibility Guideline. And they are really, really helpful. Of course, there are a lot of articles, a lot of tutorials and things like this. And the tutorials and the videos out there are very often much easier to understand, but the spec is the essence of everything. And even if you're a native speaker, this is difficult to understand because they are using a special language, like in laws. They want that the terms they are using have always, when they are using it, the same meaning. And so it's hard to get into it. But if you're trying to read them and you're doing it again and again, you understand it, even if you're not a native speaker. And then you understand that it's good that they are not using 10 different words for the same thing. If you have contact with different countries in the world and you're talking with different people in English, then sometimes you're completely surprised what kind of words they're using. I was once making a website for India and another time for Africa, and they are using words that I had to look up in the dictionary I never heard before, and they meant things that I can say in English, but I would always use completely different words. We know some funny videos from Australian English maybe, or American English and British English in comparisons with this. So it's, in the end, advantage that they are using such a strict language which is not very accessible in the first moment, but which will become easier and easier to read if you go on with it. So I really recommend to look into it and give the specs a chance, not just closing because they are looking difficult in the first time. They're really clearly structured, and once you're used to how they work and how the words are used there, it's becoming much easier. What's very important about the web content accessibility guidelines, they are not too long. I don't even remember, 14, 15 pages if you print it on regular paper, I guess. But there are a lot of questions and a lot of things you don't know how exactly to do it. But there are many, many examples, what to do, what not to do, and explanations. They are linked there. So don't look only in the spec here itself, but also in the many examples that are giving together with the web content accessibility guideline. And of course, be prepared that they are changing. They are on the website and they're always working on it. And you will find maybe sometimes that there are coming some new things into it, which are especially for one group important, like blind people. And anyway, blind people have a very good lobby, I guess, where they are making good work. There are many, many aspects in these official specifications, which are especially important for blind people. And I read many, many articles lately about accessibility, and there's always said how to support screen reader users, and screen reader is the software that blind people are using so that things are read out loud, which are in text there. They cannot see the text, so they need software which is translating the text into speech. Text-to-speech converter is the screen reader. And yeah, some of the things which are added lately into the web content accessibility guidelines are already a little bit more usability than accessibility. So that using the web is becoming more and more convenient for people who cannot see, and not only the basic accessibility, which makes sense, of course, because if you are always fighting to get to the right point, if you are looking for certain information, you may give up, although it is officially accessible, but maybe you don't find it if it's so complicated. So this is okay. But anyway, be aware when you're reading it, after so much help for blind people, I'm expecting that the next version of the web content accessibility guidelines will demand more support, for example, for deaf people or for people with other handicaps. Also, of course, the technology is advancing, and Apple was introducing voice control. And this is a software which makes possible to control your Mac or your iPhone with your voice. So you can say, open this and click on that. And these things nobody considered in the past because they were just not possible. But if you see on this slide, for example, the link http alistapart.com article cult of the complex, in future you will be able to say, please open the link http //alistapart, and the browser will do this. And these are things which will be or are already, there actually is already one success criterion in the DAPCAC.
Mark, may I interrupt you for a second? There's a question for the, no, I don't want you to be done, but there's a question from the audience. Are there tools to check a website's site's accessibility? If so, any recommendations?
Yes, I think we will come to this later. And if not, you maybe don't forget this question and ask it later. I think I have it later in the slides.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, here the official logo, and that's it. So keep up with the specs, and if they are changing, there's not changing so much. But of course, you have to look at it and be aware of things which may be new. And last but not least, and this is already a little bit into this direction of the question, get an expert, a consultant or freelancer, whatever, who has already project experience with accessible projects, because you have to learn it. Go to online courses or whatever, but it's a big help if in the first project somebody can help you who has already some experience, because later on we will see and talk about how to test it. And yeah, you will need some expertise and some experience. Here we are. Use tools like Wave, X, Revenge CSS. These three I was putting in here, and they are linked, so you can go to the pages where you can get it. These are tools which are helping for testing, and in the official documents and the specifications from the W3c, there are also there is a conformance test where it's described how to make these tests yourself, not only with tools. Yeah, and I would like to add one more tool to this list now. I hope somebody or you all have possibility to make a note for yourself, which should be all absolutely in here. This is not only the developer toolbar of Firefox, but also of Google Chrome. And there is a lot of, you can make a lot of inspections in the developer tools from Chrome. And it's, how it's called. You find it. There's something like accessibility or some check, conformance check, something like this. And it's built in there also. So there are some tools, but sadly, very often you're getting as a result, here you have a picture, please check if you have an alternative text and if it is, if it does make sense. Because of course, these things cannot check if you put an automatic alternative text to an image. For example, this is image number 5, write your alternative text here. If this text makes sense and is really saying what's on the picture or not. So even if you're using tools, you have to check it yourself. And in the results of the tools, you're getting many, many warnings and hints and things like this. You have to watch yourself. So there's no completely automatic magic thing that says this page is accessible or not. I see there are coming questions, but I'm not seeing which. I can go on, or is something?
Yes, I just posted the links for the web accessibility tool.
Yeah, super, thank you. So, make accessibility a part of your workflow and quality assurance procedure. Of course, if you have something like accessibility in your, you want to build it in your final product, you have to test it. It must be part of your quality assurance procedure. This is completely clear. And you must think about this during your whole workflow, because if the designer in the very beginning is already using poor contrast, the developer who's making later the programming, of course, cannot remove this because it's not his job. He's just putting in the numbers for the colors. And in the end, if you already in the last step in the quality assurance procedure and you find out that the beginning was not, was already having problems, then you have to start more or less from the very beginning, and this should not happen. So it must be part of your workflow, and the quality assurance must be done continuously, not only at the end. As I told before, make things different, and of course from the very beginning, so that you don't have to put a lot of work in the end of it. Sometimes it's just not possible anymore. I'm giving always an example from the real world life. Just imagine you have to pass a test that every floor in the building must be accessible for wheelchairs, and you forgot about it. You have made a building only with stairs with not an elevator in it. So some clever guy thinks, oh, we have the garage at the backside of the house, and there is, you can go into it with a car, so probably you can go into it with a wheelchair too, because there are no stairs. And just put the elevator at the back of our house and make an entrance into the elevator from the garage which is normally for the cars. No, you all know that these places are not very cozy, and not everybody likes to go there, and especially because sometimes bad things happen there. And now you're putting vulnerable people, which are even less able to run away or making things like this, so to help themselves, you're saying you have to go there. And not only this, you're putting this on the back of the house where they may be not even find it. And now you have a few problems. You have something which you're putting on something which is already ready, and normally your budget is always, you're maybe already over the budget. And now you have to put something on your building, although you don't have money and you don't want to do it, and you put it just somewhere. And you are making this for only a few people, these few people with wheelchairs, and they don't even come to you because it's on the back of the building. They don't even know that there is an elevator. They are coming to the front of the building like everybody else, and what they see, stairs. So they're leaving. So you're putting a lot of money in this elevator, which nobody uses, and which is just high costs and nothing else. But if you think about this in the very first planning, and you put it in the front of the building and make it maybe something special from glass or whatever, and people maybe will come even because of this thing, which is attractive and giving additional value to your building, then the thing is completely different, and you're getting, in the best case, back more than you were investing. So make it, plan it from the beginning. Is it worth it? I think you can say already from what I said, yes, it is worth it. But why? Accessibility is good for usability. I think it's nearly impossible to build an accessible web page that you cannot, which is bad for somebody to use. Things which are written down in the specifications, like make the buttons big enough to easily be hit, and make the text big enough to be easily read, or make the contrast high enough, and things like this, they are just good for everybody, even if you don't need it. If you're reading a long text on the screen, you're becoming less tired, and it's easier to understand if you don't have to concentrate on small, tiny buttons which have low contrast and going strange around strange forms. And yeah, I think this is completely clear and easy to understand. Then it gives users without disability the choice, for example, where to work. We were talking already about situations where everybody cannot make use of all his abilities. For example, there are places which are so loud that you cannot listen to a video, or we're just not allowed to switch on the sound, like a library. You can sit on the beach where the lights are very difficult for reading a screen, but I for myself like the reading mode of Firefox, and in Firefox now all browsers have this reading mode where you see only the main part of the web page without advertisement and so on. But in Firefox, you have something special which no other browser still implemented. You can make it read out what's there. And this is really convenient. First, the reading mode is switching off all the advertisement and all the things maybe you're not interested in. And then it can read to you what's there, and you can use it while you're brushing your teeth, while you're on a stepper and making your home training or whatever. And this is really something which is good for everybody, not only for people with disabilities. It gives everybody who has the ability to hear and to read and to see and to touch things, the possibility, the choice how to interact with the site. Like I told you before, there is already coming the voice control that you can talk with the web page. You can use the tab key on the keyboard for tabbing from one link to next link, from each interactive element in the web page to the next. You can use the mouse, you can use touchpad and so on. And we all know that it's not so nice to work with a touchpad like with a mouse, because this is less accurate. We're not used to it. And now imagine you have problems with using things like this because you lost 3 fingers in an accident or whatever. So make things easy to use and let the people choose how to use your website. Here the examples are coming. I was telling you, input with mouse, keyboard, voice, or touch screen. Also touch screen. A few years ago, nobody had this at all. The first iPhone was in 2007. It's 13 years ago. And everybody who is older than 30, I think, can really good imagine this time when there was nothing there. But it's already a little bit like imaginations, because this is so, yeah, it's just everywhere. But that I was even not long ago trying to zoom with this gesture, a picture in the newspaper I was reading, because there was something too small and I was trying to make it bigger in the newspaper. So there was a time when this was not possible, and still a lot of web developers completely forget about this and build websites which are difficult to use on touch screens. They are sitting on the big fancy monitor with 5K and making websites which are looking beautiful on the place they are using, and completely still forgot about small displays. Also, let the people choose what they want for output: sound, video, images, text, if they want to read it, if you want to have the software which is reading it to them, and so on. We were talking about this. Accessibility is good for search engine optimization. This should not be there. Web Vision is a company I was working for, and anyway, this what they are doing, I can tell here. They make alternative text mandatory. So no text, no submit, which means they are building web pages normally with typo 3. And they're saying if the person who is writing a contribution for newspaper or whatever they are doing on this web page, and he is adding or she is adding a picture, and there is no alternative text, he cannot click on send, so or save or whatever for putting the picture into the article. If there is no alternative text, for a picture, you cannot put it into your article. So this is one good example how to implement things into the workflow. It's just not working if you're making things inaccessible. About SEO, I would like to make one thing clear. Sorry for going back once again. I'm not doing this very often, but I had a discussion not long ago about the heading hierarchy about web pages. For making things accessible, it's very important, especially for blind people, that they can understand the structure of a page. They must know what is the most important headline and what are subtitles for the chapters, and when there are smaller parts of the text like subchapters. I don't know, in Germany you say Unterkapitel, but in English, no, if the chapters even have different sections, they also need headlines, and of course they must not be all of the same level. It makes no sense if they are all headlined from the first hierarchy level. So you're using HTML, H1, H2, heading 1, heading 2 for the different levels. And I had a discussion with some person who insisted that what I demanded is bad for search engine optimization. And especially in Germany, we're talking about Google, because 95 or 98% market share about search engines is, they have this market share of 95, 98%. So I was very glad to find an official video from Google, where a Google member or worker from Google said, no, this is not important for search engine optimization. At least at Google, they are not using it for the ranking. How the structure of the headlines is, of course, they're important, but they are all important. It does not matter if it is from the first level, second level, third level. It is important that you're using them, but it does not matter where's the headline of the first level or the second level or the third level. Because like I told you, also in the Google Chrome, there are tools for testing web pages. They are into accessibility. I think it could be that one day accessibility is even a ranking factor. It's not by now, but it can be, because if I look on the past, what they made important for the ranking, this is that you can use it with a mobile phone, that pages are fast and so on. They like to find good pages. And so it's completely possible, and it would be understandable if on one day accessibility is a ranking factor. Chance for new customers, of course. We were talking about selling to people with disabilities, and chance to getting employees. Customers are more happy, and if they are more happy, they are likely to come back. Just one very short example for you. Everybody knows the forms that have only input fields, and into the input field is written what you have to put in. For example, your first name, your last name, and so on. And if you write your first name and your last name into it, then you see your first name and your last name, but you don't see the label anymore. And this is a problem. If you're filling in a contact form and you're putting into it only your first name, your last name, and your email address, says send me the newsletter, this may be okay. But just imagine now you're this is a buying process, and when you're clicking on the send button, then you will get a television set for 1,000 euro. And you want to double check what you were putting into it, if you filled in all fields correctly. And you cannot. You just see what you were putting into it, but you don't know if you were putting your first name there where it should be, or there where you should be your last name, and things like this. And even if you have no disability at all, you are coming to a point where you cannot use this form anymore. So these things are not allowed if you're making an accessible web page, and this is a good example for how making accessible websites can make the people who are using the website happier because they understand everything. So accessibility is fun. I'm giving some examples here using Kindle, an iPhone, iPad, iMac, or Apple TV. They have a lot of accessibility built into their Android's TalkBack, which means let the phone read the pages you're visiting for you or other things. This is a screen reader software built into Android. In Apple, it's called VoiceOver. It's also built into the system. And the able player is one thing I really like, and I'm showing you. The able player is a player which can play videos, audio, and a lot of things. And able player is for people with accessibility problems, which need accessibility. And I'm switching off the sound. We don't need it here. What I want to show you, what's happening here, you can see here in the text. And although this is already quite a cool feature, if I stop it and I'm clicking on a part, the video is jumping to the same place. And this is not only cool and fun to use, like I promised, accessibility can be fun, but it's also, of course, very helpful. And yeah, this is something that I've never seen before I saw this able player, and these things are really nice and helpful and making things easier to use. If you have textual version of what is in the video, of course it can be found once again by search engines and so on. So this is a really cool thing here. Of course, you can choose your own design for this. This is just a demo how it works. And bad websites are not fun. There's a lot of things which are making trouble. I'm not sure which video I was linking there because I have so many examples for this. But you can have a look there, and there will be, you will see why I was putting this big black smiley here. Yeah, we're nearly done. When is the time to start? It's now. Like I told you before, most of the web pages, 98% of the top 1 million web pages have accessibility issues. So it's a good time to mark the territory, get your piece of the cake, but don't wait too long because there are already laws. We're getting more of these laws in Europe. The laws are becoming stricter. And when there are a lot of people with accessible shops, with accessible websites, there is nothing which makes a difference for you. So I think it's now the time to start. Shell, for example, is doing it for some time already, and Apple, I told you, is doing a lot for accessibility. Zalando, you cannot buy shoes if you're blind there, for example, but you can on Amazon. And here's an article called "I'm trying to give you my money, hello," because he cannot. Yeah, this also about a blind person who's not able to spend his money in a certain shop. And last but not least, here I don't have to say a lot about it. We are at the end. I'm giving you some more links for further reading, which are interesting, which are helping. Some of them German, but most of them English. and some basic information about the United Nations. Once again, here it's in German, but for example, when you're in Wikipedia and you click on it, then you can choose the language, and it's easy to see this article in English. So this should be not a problem. Just look at it, and yeah, these are some tools once again you can use for building it, the tests, quite some things. And yeah, chapter 11 is the surprise. 11 of 10 best tests ever, user tests. This I have to mention because just a few days ago I was reading a directive for German government officials. If we want to give somebody an Auftrag.
Mission.
Yeah, if you want to hire somebody, let's say like this, and they should make a product for us, we must demand its accessibility, and not only it must be conformant to official tests, and we're getting yeah, they're saying, oh, we passed this and a test, but we must make user tests, so it's really completely clear that the person who is working in our department can work with the things we were buying. So it's not just like I told you with the elevator in the back of the house, the user with the wheelchair can go to the back of the house and go through the garage into the elevator. No, they must really be able to use it by themselves. Not somebody is telling them where the elevator is. They must find it themselves. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, especially Mark, for this amazing talk. I hope you all enjoyed it. And there is a question coming in from Lena. There's also, I will read it out loud. There's also the W3, there's also the W3c Validator for HTML and CSS. What do you think about this tool in addition of Wave?
Yes, of course, this is an important part, but I want to show you something, and this I have to open Firefox because I have it there. I saw I had it here also, but no problem. And when you're making a test, let's just take any page. I'm putting into normally the HTML. So I'm opening the HTML, taking everything into copying, and then I'm going to validate and direct input. Here goes my HTML. I'm going into check, and for sure we're getting a lot of errors now because every web page has errors. Sadly, I don't know how many, but this is really a lot. I haven't seen for a long time so many errors, but no problem. What I want to show you is there's a bookmarklet that is removing all the errors that are not important for the accessibility. There are, so use it, but yeah, okay, you should use this. Look for this maybe to an search engine. I think you will find it. I don't have the link right here now. But what I wanted to say, not all of the errors are important for accessibility.
Okay, did this answer the question? What do you think about this tool in addition to Wave?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. You should do it, but not all of the errors are important for accessibility. Of course, I like if my HTML has no errors, but I cannot say here it is absolutely necessary that everything is perfect.